come forward and be sworn.
May I proceed, Your Honor?
Perhaps we can do this one time for anyone in the courtroom who's going to be a witness. If you'd raise your right hand. You swear or affirm that the testimony you will give in this proceeding will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God.
I do.
Okay.
Officer Foster, could you tell the jury who you are?
I'm Officer Ryan Foster.
What do you do for a living?
I'm a police officer. Not only do I patrol the streets of the Midlands, I'm also part of the fatal crash team.
What is the fatal crash team?
Whenever there's a serious accident in which there are fatal injuries, serious injuries, I'm part of the team that goes in and reconstructs the accidents based on the physics and figures out the motion and the trajectory of the vehicles involved.
Well, Officer Foster, why are you in court today?
I'm here because I was the first officer to report to the scene of the accident that night. I'm also the officer who conducted the fatal crash team's accident report on that accident.
All right, well, before we talk about the defendant's case and why you're here today, I want to give the jury an idea of how you do the job. When reconstructing an accident, what types of things do you look at?
I look at a number of factors. I look at the indentations on the vehicles. I look at the markings on the vehicles. I look at the terrain the vehicle has traveled on, the road, any tire marks on the road, and other such factors which may have played a role in the accident.
And did you have enough information to come to your conclusions in Ms. Dobson's case?
I did.
Officer Foster, what do you do once you gather all the information you need?
Well, once I have all the information, I use my knowledge of physics as well as the Windsor and Strasbourg primer. That's an article that details the science of accident reconstruction. It gives me a list of formulas that I can use in order to figure out the speed of the car and other factors that are involved in the accident scene. I use the information that I have and I plug it into these formulas to come to my conclusions.
Well, using these, do you have any training in how to use these formulas? Where did you go to school?
I do. I went to school at Georgia Tech. I got a bachelor's in science in civil engineering.
Officer Foster, once you have the information you need, do you apply those formulas and those methods reliably to the facts of the case?
I do.
And did you do that in the defendant's case?
I did.
So when you reconstruct an accident, what's the first thing that you do?
Well, I create a diagram of the crash site.
Did you make one in the defendant's case?
Yes, I did.
Would you recognize it if I showed it to you?
I would.
Your Honor, showing the witness and opposing counsel, States 11. Your Honor, would you like a copy?
That would be fine if you have an issue.
Yes, sir, we do. Officer Foster, I'm handing you States 11. Can you tell us what that is?
That's a diagram I made of the accident scene.
And is that a fair and accurate depiction of the accident as it happened?
Yes, it is.
Your Honor, we offer States 11 into evidence.
Any objection?
No objection, Your Honor.
All right, that'll be received.
Your Honor, may we use an enlargement of this and have Officer Foster step off the stand to walk the jury through the accident?
Certainly.
All right, Officer Foster, I'm going to take that one from you. All right, Officer Foster, why don't you step over here and can you tell us exactly what we're looking at?
Yes, this is Canyon Road. It's the site of the accident.
And now, using this car, could you describe to the jury what happened the night the defendant was driving?
Sure. I'm sorry, Your Honor. Could I just reposition myself so I can see what's going on?
Certainly.
So, Officer Foster, what happened first?
Well, the car, which is driven by Danny Dawson, is going northbound on Canyon Road at this point.
And I'm sorry, Officer Foster, to interrupt, but how fast was she going at this point?
She was going...
Objection, Your Honor. That calls for an improper opinion.
May I respond, Your Honor?
Yes.
Under Rule 702, we've laid the proper foundation that Officer Foster has the education and experience, as well as the other three factors of 702 as an accident reconstructionist. This is well within his realm of expertise.
If I could explain, Your Honor. This witness has to have applied reliable principles and methods for his conclusions to be admissible. As an offer of proof, this witness used something called a drag sled to come to his conclusions about the speed of the car in this case. that's not a reliable principle or method that can be used. If I could, a brief voir dire on this subject would lay that foundation.
Go ahead, you may proceed.
And just for the record, the voir dire time comes from the defense's cross time.
All right.
Officer Foster, you reached a conclusion about how fast Danny Dawson was driving on the 24th, right?
Yes, I did.
And you used a drag sled to come to that conclusion, right?
I used a drag sled to measure a variable in that solution.
So if the drag sled tests were inaccurate, then your conclusions would also be inaccurate, right?
Yes, they would be skewed a little bit.
Now, it's never been proven that a drag sled can reach accurate conclusions. Isn't that right?
No. May I explain?
Sorry, Officer Foster. A drag sled is used to simulate a car on a road, right?
It's used to simulate the motion of the tire, the friction between the tire and the surface on the road.
And it's never been proven that it can accurately recreate the motion of a tire on a road. Isn't that right?
Studies have not proven or disproven that it accurately simulates this number. But a number of experts in the field do use it. And because of the consensus in the field, it is still appropriate for me, as an expert, to use it.
But a number of experts in the field also believe that it doesn't accurately recreate the conditions, right?
There is controversy in the field, but there is no dispositive reason for me to not use it at the
And
moment.
just to be clear, Officer Foster, there has been no test proving that it can accurately recreate a car.
That's right. There has been no test proving or disproving this to be the case.
Thank you, Officer. Nothing further.
Your Honor, may I respond to it?
Yes, you may. Briefly.
Under Rule 702, that's a 104A question of admissibility. We have to meet a preponderance of evidence standard. 51% that the court believes that Officer Foster has met that standard. All of the foundation of 702 is what makes up that 104 weighing test. Officer Foster has met that foundation.
I'm going to find that based on his testimony that there are a number of experts have allowed this device to be used. I'm going to overrule the objection, but you can certainly cross-examine. And I took note of your comments and your questions. So
Yes.
let's proceed with the
Yes, Your Honor.
examination.
Officer Foster, Your Honor, may you step off the stand? Officer Foster, why don't you come back up here with me? Now, how fast was the defendant going when she left the roadway right about here?
Well, right here, she was going at 66 miles an hour on Canyon Road.
And what is the speed limit on Canyon Road?
It is 35 miles an hour.
So when the defendant was going 66 in this 35 mile per hour zone, what happened next?
Well, at this point right here, the defendant, she lost control of her car. She swerved off the road, and you can see the line that's a little bit off the side of the road. That's where her tires made ruts on the side of the road. And she stayed on the side of the road for quite a little bit. And eventually, she manages to come back onto the road right about here.
All right, and then what happened when she got back on the road?
Well, once she returns onto the road, she loses control of the car because she overcorrects to get back onto the road. At which point, she loses control, she skids, and hits a utility pole and a tree on the other side of the road.
All right, thank you, Officer Foster. I'm going to take that from you and have your seat. Officer Foster, when did you get to the scene of this accident?
I got to the scene shortly after the accident had already happened. I was patrolling Canyon Road, so I wasn't too far away.
And what did you see when you got there?
Well, when I got there, I saw the car, which had been impacted against the utility pole and the tree. I obviously ran up and tried to see exactly how the passengers of the car were doing. I saw the driver, Miss Dawson, standing outside the car, and I looked to see the other passengers in the car. In the back seat, I saw Miss Taylor Hobson. She was in the back seat. She was screaming, and she had blood all over her. And in the front seat, in the front passenger seat, I saw Vanessa Sullivan, and she was not responding. She was non-responsive.
Did you speak to the defendant?
Yes, I spoke to her.
What did she say?
She said that she needed another drink.
When the defendant told you that she needed another drink, what did you do?
That's when I realized that she may have been driving under the influence, and I decided that it would be appropriate for me to conduct some field sobriety tests on her.
What's a field sobriety test?
A field sobriety test is what I use when I'm in the field and I don't have a machine that tells me the exact blood alcohol concentration of the subject I want to test. I may not know their blood alcohol, but I can use their biological movements to conclude whether or not they are under the influence of alcohol.
And how many of those tests did you run on the defendant?
I ran 4 separate tests on this defendant.
All right, well, what was the first one?
Well, the first test I had Ms. Dawson do was a test which involved her saying her ABCs backwards.
Could she say her ABCs backwards?
No, she could not.
All right, what about the second test?
The second test was a much more accurate test, I believe. It's called the horizontal gaze nystagmus test.
Officer Foster, what is the horizontal gaze nystagmus test?
The horizontal gaze nystagmus test is a test that measures the eye movement. When somebody is under the influence of alcohol, their eyes jerk while following a moving object. If they're not under the influence of alcohol, their eyes follow the moving object in a very smooth manner. In order to conduct the test, I take a flashlight and I shine it into the eyes of the subject. Then I take a pen or my finger and I move it in front of the subject and have their eyes follow me. And then I look at how their eyes follow me.
Well, how did the defendant's eyes follow you that night?
The defendant's eyes noticeably jerked as they followed the object. They were not moving fluidly.
Can this test be affected by any external factors, like the rain, for example?
No, and that's one of the wonderful things about this test. There's no external factors that can really affect it. It's mostly a test of how well, or how much, rather, that you've had alcohol.
Well, what about the other 2 field sobriety tests? Did the defendant pass those?
She passed neither of the other 2 tests.
So after the defendant failed these 4 field sobriety tests, what did you do?
I realized that it would be best for me to take her to the police station and have her administered a breath alcohol concentration test. So I put her in the back of the police car and I drove her to the police station.
Well, what did you tell her about this breathalyzer test?
I informed her of her rights. I told her that if she chose not to take this test, that evidence could be used against her.
Well, what were the results of the defendant's breathalyzer test?
I don't know. She refused to take the test.
Thank you, Officer Foster. Pass the witness, Your Honor.
Cross-examination.
Yes, Your Honor. And just for clarification, can I assume that the earlier voir dire was out of the presence of the jury?
Yes, of course.
May I proceed? Now, Officer Foster, you testified on direct examination that Miss Dawson's car was going 66 miles an hour, right?
That's correct. When she lost control on the road at that point.
Now, you also testified that you used reliable principles and methods to come to that conclusion, right?
I did.
One of the methods that you used was something called a drag sled, right?
That's right.
Now, the drag sled was integral to your calculations to get to the speed, right?
It was part of my calculation.
If the result from the drag sled were wrong, then your calculations would be wrong.
That would change my calculation.
Which would mean that the speed that you concluded would also be wrong.
It would also change the speed.
Now, this drag sled is a very delicate procedure, right?
It is. That's why I have to have the necessary training to use it. I have to go through a number of courses to use a drag sled.
Officer Foster, in a second you can explain any answers you want, but for now I'm just going to have to ask you to answer yes or no. Now, in order for this test to be performed correctly, you have to pull the drag sled exactly parallel to the road, right?
Yes.
Even a slight deviation can cause an error.
Yes.
That error is often large.
Yes.
Now, in this case, the road that you were measuring was Canyon Road, right?
Yes.
And Canyon Road is curved.
Yes.
So you would have had to pull the drag sled exactly parallel to a curved road to get an accurate reading.
That's right.
Now, to get an accurate reading, the drag sled also has to be pulled on the road under similar conditions to the time that the crash occurred, right?
Yes.
And when the crash occurred, it was raining, wasn't it?
Yes.
And when you performed the drag sled test, it wasn't raining.
Yes, the road was still wet.
But the conditions weren't the same.
They were the same.
Well, it wasn't raining when you performed the test.
Yes, but the road conditions were the same.
I'm sorry, Officer Foster, it wasn't raining when you performed the test, yes or no?
No, it was not at that time.
And when the car crashed, it was raining.
Yes.
Now, even assuming that you performed the test correctly, it's still not clear whether the test can be performed accurately, right?
Pardon me, can you repeat the question?
Well, Officer Foster, there's controversy about whether the drag sled is an accurate test at all, right?
There is controversy.
That's because the drag sled is supposed to accurately simulate the conditions of a car on a roadway, right?
It is.
And it's never been proven that a drag sled can accurately simulate the conditions of a car on a roadway.
No studies have proven or disproven this fact.
But you still relied on the drag sled when coming to your conclusions.
Yes, there is a consensus among experts in my field that it is an appropriate tool.
But there are experts in your field who believe it's inappropriate to use the drag sled.
That's right. It's an undecided controversy right now.
Now, you saw Vanessa Sullivan's car just minutes before it crashed, right?
Yes, but at the time I had no premonition.
I'm sorry, Officer Foster, again, just a yes or no answer to the questions. So you saw Vanessa Sullivan's car just minutes before it crashed.
Yes.
And you were on patrol in the area when you saw it.
Yes,
And you clocked the speed of that car, right?
I did.
And you used a radar gun.
I did.
And that radar gun had been calibrated earlier that day.
Yes.
And when you clocked the speed of the car just minutes before the crash, it was going 54 miles an hour.
Yes.
Now, you take reckless driving very seriously, right, officer?
I do.
And you don't let anyone off the hook.
If the situation is inappropriate, then yes, I would pull over the drive.
In fact, just earlier that night, earlier on the 24th of September, you pulled someone else over for reckless driving, right?
Yes,
It was a friend of your grandfather's.
he was.
So even family friends don't get off.
That's right.
When you saw Vanessa Sullivan's car that night, before the crash, you thought it was driving a little dangerously, right?
I thought that it was going a bit too fast, but given the weather conditions,
Well, you also thought that it was swerving, right?
I saw it was swerving.
No, you didn't pull over that car, did you?
No,
You didn't pull over that car after you saw its license plate, isn't that right?
yes, I saw its license plate.
And that license plate read Sully 3.
It did.
And that license plate told you that the car belonged to the Sullivan family.
Yes, that's what the license plate told me.
The Sullivan family is the family of the district attorney of Breckenridge County,
Yes, she's Vanessa's mom.
the county where you work.
Yes,
Now, you testified on direct examination that you were the first officer to arrive at the scene of the crime, right?
yes,
That you heard Miss Dawson say something about needing a drink,
yes,
and then you performed the field sobriety tests, right?
yes.
But you left something out of that story on direct examination, didn't you?
I didn't.
Well, officer, between the time that you spoke with Miss Dawson and the time that you administered the field sobriety tests, Ryan Sullivan arrived at the scene of the crime, right? At the scene of the accident, sorry.
Ryan Sullivan, Vanessa's mom.
Yeah.
Yes,
So that's the mother of the girl who had just died.
that's right.
And again, the mother of the girl who had just died, the district attorney of the county that you work in.
Yes,
And you told her that her daughter had been taken away, right?
yes,
But she stayed at the scene of the accident.
she did.
She started yelling at you, isn't that right?
Yes, she did.
She yelled,
Objection, Your Honor. This is hearsay.
may I respond? This is just going to the effect on the listener.
For that limited purpose and not for the truth of the matter asserted, it will be admitted. The jury's admonished to not to consider it for the truth of the matter asserted.
She yelled, I'm going to make Dawson's life a living hell, because I can still do that.
Yes,
When you heard the district attorney say that, you knew it was time to perform some tests, right?
I had already concluded that prior to her arrival that it was time to perform those tests.
But Miss Sullivan yelling that at you influenced your decision to perform those tests, isn't that right?
I had decided to perform those tests prior.
I'm sorry, Officer Foster, is it your testimony today that the district attorney yelling at you in no way influenced your decision to apply those tests?
I applied those tests after she shouted at me.
And your decision to apply those tests was partly influenced by her shouting at you?
Objection, Your Honor. This question has been asked and answered. It's unnecessarily cumulative.
If I'll give you a little latitude. It is cumulative. Proceed to, I'll overrule the objection, but proceed to another line of inquiry.
Yes, Your Honor. Just to be clear, Officer Foster, yes or no, the district attorney yelling at you had some impact on your decision to perform the field sobriety tests?
Yes, it had some impact.
Now, when you performed those field sobriety tests, the district attorney was still there, right?
She was.
In fact, she was yelling at Miss Dawson when you were trying to perform these tests.
She was.
You asked her to leave, isn't that right?
Yes.
But she didn't.
She was distraught.
So she didn't leave.
She didn't.
So all the while that you were performing these field sobriety tests, the mother of the girl who had just died was yelling at Miss Dawson.
She was.
Nothing further at this time, Your Honor.
Redirect, Your Honor? Yes. Officer Foster, when Miss Sullivan, Vanessa's mother, was at the scene, how many field sobriety tests did you run?
I ran 4.
And now you mentioned to us a minute ago that you ran that horizontal gaze nystagmus test, right?
Yes, I did.
Can that be affected by someone yelling at you?
No, it can't. It's a test that purely measures your alcohol consumption.
And how did the defendant perform on that test?
He failed it.
Officer Foster, opposing counsel talked a lot about this drag sled that you use on Canyon Road. Now, Canyon Road, is it a curved road or is it a straight road?
The road itself is curved, but it's on a flat surface.
So it's a flat road, right?
Yes.
So could you explain to us how you use the drag sled to come up with your drag factor?
Yeah, I stood on the road, I pulled it parallel to the road, and I looked at the reading I got from that drag sled, and I used that, and I plugged it in the formulas given to me. I've done this test a number of times, and I've never really had any errors with the performance on the drag sled portion of it.
And what did that formula that you plugged in the drag sled number into tell you how fast the defendant was going that night?
It told me she was going 66 miles an hour.
Pass the witness, Your Honor.
Right. Anything further from the...
No recross, Your Honor. Can this witness be excused?
Yes, you may be excused.
I'm sorry, do you have your reason for that?
Yes, please.
The prosecution may call its next witness.
Yes, Your Honor. The prosecution calls Pat Lawrence to the stand.
You may proceed.
Good afternoon. Would you please introduce yourself to the jury?
Hi, my name is Pat Lawrence.
What do you do, Miss Lawrence?
Well, that's sort of a sore subject. I was working at a ski resort up in Tahoe, but it turns out that you have to be coordinated to teach skiing, so then I tried to be a server. But then it turns out you have to be coordinated to ski too, so now I'm unemployed.
Where were you a server?
I was a server at Chuggy's. It's one of the best bars here in Midlands.
Is Chuggy's the bar at which the defendant was at on the day of September 24th?
Well, yes, she was sitting at my table.
What were you doing when you went to work that day?
Well, first, it was my first day of work, so I had to go to training, and then I didn't get to start working until about 7 o'clock that night.
When did the defendant arrive at the bar?
Well, when I got there around 2:30 or 3, she was already there and had already been drinking too.
When did you get off serving? Off of training?
I finished training at 6:30, and fortunately I had a little break before I started working because I had to go change my clothes.
Why did you have to change your clothes?
Well, Miss Dawson had already had half a dozen alcoholic drinks and spilled one of her drinks all over me when she stumbled into
Objection,
me.
lack of foundation.
Your Honor, this witness was at the bar all afternoon at the same time at which the defendant was at the bar.
Objection is overruled.
Please go on, Ms. Lawrence.
Well, I was just saying, she stumbled into me. It was only 6:30, and she got this drink. It was pink all over me, so I had to go change.
What did you do? What happened after you changed?
After I changed, I went back to the bar, And then around 7, I started serving tables. It was my first night on the job, and I was really excited.
Was the defendant at one of your tables?
Yes, she was. They were being nice to me that night. It was really crowded, but since it was my first night, I didn't have that many tables. One of them was Miss Dawson, though, and 2 of her friends.
Were all 3 of them drinking?
Yes, they were. They were ordering drinks, and Miss Dawson was ordering drinks for herself and for the rest of the table.
Were they drinking easy drinks like pineapple daiquiris or more hard liquor?
They were drinking hard liquor, like whiskey on the rocks and whiskey and ginger ales, things like that with a lot of alcohol.
Is there any way to know how many drinks they did purchase that night?
Well, yes, we make receipts for everyone, and if they pay with a credit card, then they always had to sign the bottom so that we could make sure the credit card company would actually charge them.
Would you recognize the receipts from that night if you saw them right now?
Of course.
Your Honor, I'd like to approach the witness with the receipts from that night.
You don't need to request them.
Would you like a copy?
Yes.
Ms. Lawrence, what is that?
So the top one is the receipt from earlier in the afternoon, and then the one behind it is the receipt from when Miss Dawson was sitting at my table that night.
Are those true and correct copies of the original receipts?
Yes, they are.
Your Honor, we offer Exhibits 2A and 2B as evidence.
Any objection?
No objection, Your Honor.
So be received.
Let me take that from you. Now, Ms. Lawrence, I'd like to move to later in the night. What happened later in the night?
Well, later in the night, I was trying to keep track of Miss Dawson because she had said she was going to be the designated driver, which worried me. So I was trying to watch out for her, and then I found her standing in a corner, kind of just staring at the wall.
Why was she in a corner?
I don't know, but I was worried, so I asked her if she needed anything, and she told me she wanted a tequila sunrise.
Did you give it to her?
Well, not right away. Part of my job was to make sure that I wasn't serving people too much and that they weren't pushing their limits. So first I asked her if she was driving.
What did she say?
She said she was driving because she said she wasn't that tipsy. But then she said she had never felt so buzzed after so few drinks. So I was kind of unsure if I should bring her the drink or not.
Did you bring her the drink?
I did. I figured she wouldn't actually be driving.
What happened after you brought her the drink?
I brought her the drink, and then I started bringing her sodas. And then when I went to go bring her a soda, she asked me for some pills.
Objection, Your Honor. More prejudicial than probative.
Your Honor, an element of the crime today is that the victim consciously disregarded another human life, being Vanessa Sullivan's. Her asking for pills goes to show that she was conscious of the mental state that she was in, that being drunk. Therefore, it's extremely probative.
May I be heard, Your Honor? Your Honor, the only reason that these pills would have probative value is if we understood what these pills were actually for and their medical usage or what they may or may not do to the human body. This is a waitress. She has no knowledge of what these pills could do, and just saying that Ms. Dawson asked for drugs or pills makes it prejudicial.
Let me just make a comment now, just as a matter of interest, is that this type of issue, if this was a regular trial, would be raised in what's called an in limine motion before trial, where both sides can brief it, because it's really tough for the trier of fact to understand which one of these scenarios is correct. So based on that, I'm going to overrule the objection, but certainly counsel can cross-examine on these issues.
I'm sorry, please go on.
I was talking about her coming up to me and asking me for pills. She said she wanted them to help her concentrate, but I don't keep pills on me. It was my first day. I didn't want to get fired.
What kind of pills were these?
She said they were concentration pills, that some of the waitresses had them at Chuggy's, but I didn't.
What happened after she asked you for concentration pills?
A little bit later that night, right before everyone was about to leave, the band had finished up and everyone ordered shots of grain alcohol, but Miss Dawson ordered water, and I sort of messed that one up.
How did you mess that up?
Well, I don't know if you've ever seen grain alcohol, but it's totally clear. And water's clear, and I had it all in my tray, and I couldn't tell which was which, and I accidentally gave her a shot of grain alcohol.
Did you at least tell her what you did?
Of course. I explained to her that, grain alcohol is the same as like 2 shots of another drink, and that she had just had 2 drinks, and I begged her not to drive.
Did she end up driving?
She said that she was fine, that the grain alcohol would help her concentrate, and that she'd call me when she set a speed record on the way home.
What happened after she said that she'd call you about her speed record?
Well, I wasn't really sure what to do, but then I saw that it was raining, and I was worried about her speeding in the rain, so I ran out to try and stop her. But I was too late. She just said she was going to make Richard Petty look like he was in the slow lane, and she got in the car.
I passed the witness.
May I proceed? Good afternoon, Ms. Lyons.
Hi.
Ms. Lyons, you were fired from Chucky's, is that right?
Yes, I was.
You were fired because of what happened on September 24th?
I think that was part of it.
Ms. Lawrence, you were only fired after Danny Dawson had been in that bar that night, right?
I think I was fired because of Miss Sullivan and the bartender.
Ms. Lawrence, you were fired after Danny Dawson had been in the bar that night, right?
Yes, that's right. It was the next day.
You were fired only after Danny Dawson had been in your section, is that correct?
Yes, I was the one serving her.
You were only fired after you had served Miss Dawson drinks the whole night, right?
That's right. I guess I should have stopped serving her, but I know I messed up.
Ms. Lawrence, you're testifying against Danny Dawson today, aren't you?
I'm just doing what he asked me to do. He said he was going to ask me some questions, and I just had to answer.
Okay, well, let's talk about some of the questions that you got asked on direct examination.
Okay.
About the drinks that you served Miss Dawson that night, okay?
Okay.
So you said that you got to the bar around 2:30, right?
Yeah, I think it was about 2:30 or 3.
You didn't actually start working until 7 p.m.?
I had to go through training first. It was my first day.
Now, Ms. Lawrence, on direct examination, you said that Miss Dawson had 6 drinks or so before 7 p.m., is that right?
That's right. By the time I finished my training, she was already drunk.
But, Ms. Lawrence, you didn't serve Danny Dawson any of those drinks, did you?
No, I wasn't the one serving. I was just watching.
You didn't actually see Danny Dawson drink those 6 drinks, did you?
No, I didn't. I saw the glasses get served to her, and then they ended up empty right in front of her.
So you didn't see Danny Dawson drink any of those drinks, right?
No, I wasn't standing there watching her.
Now, after you started work at around 7 p.m., Danny Dawson ordered dinner, right?
I'd call it appetizers, but I mean, maybe it was her dinner.
Well, while she ordered those appetizers, she also ordered a whiskey drink, is that right?
I think so.
You didn't actually see Miss Dawson drink that one either, though, did you?
Not that one in particular.
Later on in the night, you said that Miss Dawson ordered a round of screwdrivers for the table, right?
I didn't say that, but you're right, she did. She ordered screwdrivers for the whole table.
But again, Miss Lawrence, you didn't actually see Danny Dawson drink any of those screwdrivers, did you?
Not those drinks in particular, like I've been saying.
The only drink that you saw Danny Dawson have was one whiskey drink towards the end of the night, is that right?
I saw her drink the whole thing, and then I saw her start sipping on others. Yeah, that's right.
So the only full drink you actually saw Danny Dawson have was one whiskey drink.
You're right. That's the only one where I saw her take every sip.
And you were working at Chuggy's for about 6 hours that night, right?
Yes, that's right.
So in 6 hours, Miss Lawrence, you saw Danny Dawson have one drink.
Oh, I saw her have more, but I only watched her completely drink that one.
You only saw Danny Dawson drink one drink in 6 hours. Is that correct?
Objection, Your Honor. This asked and answered and unnecessarily cumulative.
Your Honor, the witness hasn't answered my question.
Just answer the question and then let's move on to the next question. But go ahead. Objection overruled.
Miss Lawrence.
Yes.
In 6 hours, you only actually saw Danny Dawson drink One drink.
That's right, the whole thing.
Now, later on in the night, you said that Danny Dawson was planning to drive, right?
That's right. She had been planning earlier on to drive, too. That's why I was watching out for her.
So because she was planning to drive, she started ordering sodas, is that right?
I don't know why she started ordering sodas, but she did.
And so you wanted to rush as many sodas over to her as possible, correct?
That's right. I thought she might pass out before she even got home.
You wanted to do that so that you could help Miss Dawson sober up, is that right?
No, I didn't want to help her sober up. I just wanted to make sure she didn't pass out in the bar.
Well, at the end of the night, Miss Lawrence, while Miss Dawson was drinking sodas, she didn't order any other alcoholic drinks, did she?
No, you're right. That's when I messed up.
Well, when you messed up, though, Miss Lawrence, Danny Dawson actually just asked for water. Is that right?
That's right. She did.
Thank you, Miss Lawrence. No further questions, Your Honor.
We have no redirect, Your Honor. We ask that the witness be allowed to step down.
You may be excused. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
You have another witness?
Yes, Your Honor.
Your Honor, prosecution calls Sam Lyons to the stand.
Okay, Mr. Lyons, come forward, please. You may proceed.
Good afternoon. Could you introduce yourself to the jury?
Yes, hi, my name is Samantha Lyons, but people call me Sam for short.
And Ms. Lyons, what is it that you do?
Oh, I'm a taxi cab driver. I've been one ever since high school. I love the purr of the engine, the wind in my hair. But my Prius doesn't purr much.
And Ms. Lyons, how do you know the defendant?
Well, I know her from over the summer. She's one of my frequent flyers when, put lightly, she's had a few too many to drink.
Now, I want to talk to you about the afternoon of the crash. Where were you?
I was at Chuggy's around 4:30. I was waiting for some customers at that time.
What did you see?
Well, when I was in Chuggy's, I saw Miss Dawson there. She was sitting at the bar and, well, she was having drinks, like always.
Well, did you get a chance to speak with the defendant?
Yeah, I did. I thought that she was going to need a cab by the end of the night, so I told her where she could find me.
Well, what did she say?
Oh, she said that the DD was going to be the DD. I took that to mean that she was going to drive home. Honestly, I thought she was joking.
Ms. Lyons, why did you think she was joking?
Well, at 4:30, her speech was slurred.
Now, you said you left. Did you come back to Chucky's?
Yes, I did. After I left, I came back to Chucky's at 7 o'clock. That was when the band had its opening. It was really good.
Well, did you get a chance to see the defendant again?
Yes, I noticed that Pat, who's the server, was bringing plenty of drinks over to the table. And I saw Miss Dawson dancing. For lack of a better word, she was dancing like a demented marionette.
How did the defendant seem to you at this time?
Still slurring and stumbling.
Did you get a chance to speak with her again?
Well, I left again, and this time I came back at 11 o'clock. And that was when I got to speak to her again.
What happened this time?
Well, I talked to her, but she kind of slurred something at me, and she grabbed my arm. I thought whatever her plan was, she definitely was going to get in my cab at the end of the night.
Why did you think that she would definitely be going home with you at this time?
Well, she was dancing crazy and slurring her words.
Ms. Lyons, did you happen to see the defendant when she was leaving?
Yeah, that was around 12:40, after midnight, and I offered a ride to her.
Well, did she accept your ride this time?
Oh, no, ma'am, she didn't. She said that I was driving too slow, going to drive too slow.
Ms. Lyons, do you know who ended up driving that night?
Yes, I do. I saw that Miss Dawson got in the driver's seat.
What happened then?
Well, she fishtailed the parking lot so fast she got mud all over my cab.
Pass the witness.
Thank you. Ross?
Yes, Your Honor. Ms. Lyons, I'd like to talk to you about what you were able to see that night. You first saw the defendant at 4:30,
Yes, I did.
and she was slurring her words.
Yes, she
But then
was.
you left the bar for 2 hours, is that correct?
Yeah, I'm a cab driver.
And then you returned again at 7.
Yes.
And she was dancing,
Pretty crazily.
enjoying the music.
I guess, yes.
But you didn't see the defendant, or excuse me, Miss Dawson drink anything, did you?
No, I was only in at the bar for a couple minutes.
And then after that, you left again
Yes, I did.
and didn't return to the bar until 11.
That's right.
And during the hours of 4:30 to 11, you can't tell me what Miss Dawson had to drink,
No, ma'am, I can't.
or if she stopped drinking.
That's true.
And at 11, when you spoke to her, her speech was slurred.
Yes, still slurred.
But then again, you left for another hour and a half afterwards.
That's true.
And it wasn't until 12:40, when you arrived back at the bar and saw her walk out 5 minutes later, that you saw the defendant again, correct?
Yeah, that was when I offered her a ride.
And at that time, she wasn't stumbling.
Sure, slurring was a little less, that's true.
In fact, actually, when she refused a ride home, she wasn't slurring at all, was she?
She wasn't sober, if that's what you're asking.
No, Miss Lyons, I'd like you to listen to my question carefully. She wasn't slurring her words,
At that point, she wasn't.
and she wasn't stumbling.
No.
In fact, you believed she was a lot better off than she had been before, correct?
She was certainly better off, that's true.
And you've been in the cab business a long time, haven't you?
Yes, I had.
You've taken a lot of drunk people home from Chuggy's.
Yes, including Miss Dawson.
But that night, you didn't believe what she was doing was that bad, did you?
Pardon? That bad?
You didn't believe that Miss Dawson driving that night was that bad.
I didn't think she was sober at that time.
Miss Dawson, again, yes or no, listen carefully to my question about Miss Dawson driving that night. Didn't seem that bad.
She was better off, that's true.
You didn't believe what she was doing was that dangerous.
That's fair.
So that's a yes?
Yes.
And so you let her drive off without saying a word.
That's true.
Thank you. No further questions.
Ross,
No redirect, Your Honor. We simply ask that the witness be allowed to step down.
may be excused. Thank you.
At this point in time, the prosecution rests its case-in-chief, and we request a brief 5 or 10 minute recess.
Okay, we'll take a recess. We'll resume in 10 minutes.